And we are back for another casual conversation with the classic. And I'm here with someone I've been a fan of for many, many years. Finally get the chance and privilege to talk to him. None other than the returning Kyle O Reilly. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Really, really good. I got a ton of stuff I want to talk to you about. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time to most of the wrestling fans because a lot of it's going to be about Vancouver and a lot of it might not make sense unless they're from here for the first little bit. But, local Vancouver, I found it fascinating that we only grew up maybe 20 minutes away from each other. I was on the other side of Scott Road. We were the people that would come to parties in your side of town and ruin them.
What high school did you go to?
I went to the infamous Princess Margaret Secondary. How about yourself?
North Delta.
Was it North Delta? You did go to North Delta. Okay, sweet. Yeah.
Back when they had junior high.
Yeah, you guys had better house parties on that side. They were more fun.
Yeah, they were.
And then we would come there and ruin them with our bad attitudes. But it's crazy the difference of the two sides of Scott Road that you get.
Yeah.
I guess quickly right off the bat, since it is relevant at the moment before we get into the rest and stuff, are you still a Canucks fan? Do you still follow?
Yeah. Game 6 tonight, baby. Let's go.
I've had a hard time trying to get back into it because I'm tiptoeing around this first series because I'm I don't know. I was there for 2011. I felt it.
Oh, I felt in 94 too. That one, I vivid memories of that too, dude. And it's hard to follow as well. Being on the East Coast in Florida, the games aren't on very often, and they're West Coast time, so they're late. But when they're in the playoffs, I mean, you gotta support the boys in blue.
100%. Right? I also struggle sometimes with West Coast hockey because as much as it's good, but it's a little bit too much finesse. But then you watch East Coast hockey and they're all just hitting each other and shooting and shooting and shooting. But I'm rooting for them too. I hope they do well. I hope we make it at least to the next round. And then, to be honest, I hope we make it all the way to the end. But once again, just tiptoeing around the situation, seeing how it plays.
One game at a time, right?
One game at a time. I want to jump into it. So you guys are coming to Vancouver. You guys are coming to Rogers Arena May 11th for AEW Collision. I feel like I might have played a small part of that. I was in the post-media scrum at Full Gear, and I asked Tony, I'm like, hey, you guys did a whole Canadian tour. Didn't even come to Vancouver. And then 2 weeks later, you guys booked a Vancouver show. So I'm curious.
Wait to come back. Let's be real. No.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you also should be glad that they're doing it once you're back too, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm grateful.
Last year. So the first Vancouver show, Kyle O Reilly's in town. What does that mean to you? And what does it mean to be working in Rogers Arena?
Yeah, it's really a full circle moment for me. It's really cool and really special because I went to my very first show, live wrestling show at GM Place, which is now Rogers Arena. In 1998, my dad took me and my friend, and it was a really transcending experience. I remember so many vivid details about it, and it really, I really become a fan. I've got early memories of wrestling and golden era WWF stuff. It was really kind of the mid to late 90s where I became an obsessed fan. And going to when you see wrestling live, there's nothing like it, right? It really captured me. And I knew that I wanted to be involved with this to some degree, whether, being a wrestler or what.
How cool is it for you? I've heard you talk about it in the past when you went to that show, Rock Bottom in 98, and you walked through. And I think every wrestling fan has this feeling, and you see the ring, right? And you're whoa, this is real. How cool is it for you to not only know that there's going to be fans that might be going to their first wrestling show, definitely their first AEW show. They might be big AEW fans, and they might walk through those curtains and see that ring, but they also get to see someone that grew up in the same neighborhood they did in that ring to make it even a little bit more real for them. Because I don't think there was anybody on that card that was from Vancouver necessarily.
No. The only guys that were on that card that are actually in AEW now were Adam Copeland and Christian Cage.
Oh, wow.
They wrestled on that show.
That's crazy.
So that's really cool. I've shared that with them as well, and that it's here I am 25 years later, coming to that building, and it's really neat, man.
I'm gonna jump the gun with one of my questions for later, right now since you brought that up. But would you say it would almost be super cool to either team with or wrestle Adam Copeland on Collision?
Oh wow. Yeah, that'd be really special and cool. That's beyond my wheelhouse, making the matches. I just show up and work as hard as I can in those 10 to 20 minutes in the ropes, right? And that's all I can control. So
I saw you kind of eye his title a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was this week, and I was like, oh, this could be a really cool Canadian versus Canadian match here in Vancouver.
It would be cool.
Really quickly, because people ask me this all the time, and I always feel like when you live in a city, and I live in West Vancouver now, when you live in a city for a long period of time, the stuff that people can do here tend to be like, I don't know what you can do here. Like, there's lots of stuff to do here, but I don't really know what there is to do there. When people are like, hey, coming to Vancouver, like, what should I see? What should I visit? Now that you're in the United States and you're out of here for most of the time, you probably have a different perspective of it. If people are coming here to Vancouver, say they're driving up from Seattle or something for Collision or whatnot, what do you think they should be doing in this city?
One of the things I always recommend is Capilano Suspension Bridge. So you get up to North Van, Lynn Canyon there. It's beautiful. You can do that little hike around like the glass bottom, whatever it is, the cliff. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a deep cool one too in North Van.
Yeah, it's beautiful there. That's an easy thing. Tell people, if they're looking for something active to do, the Grouse Grind or the Seawall. Vancouver's a beautiful city, man. There's a lot you can do. You can go up on the mountain and then the beach on the same day, right? And grab some wicked sushi at the eatery. And but I have been gone for a long time, so I know a lot has changed. I know there's stuff popping up. There's new stuff everywhere. I just kind of go with those old staples that really I have fond memories of doing, growing up there.
Yeah, I just always find, because people ask me, I'm like, I don't know, I've lived here my entire life, that like I've probably already done everything, but it's not that like I don't live here like a tourist. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do this weekend. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's totally. Right?
But I do say you guys are coming at the best time, because I don't know if you remember, but I always say like we get like 4 really good months of weather, and it's usually from like May to August where you'll get sunshine. Yeah, it's sunny up right now. It was sunny with a nice breeze. It's actually not hot yet, so you awesome. Can go outside and do the bike riding and the hiking, and it's actually not too bad. I will say, July, August gets real hot sometimes, but May, June is like it's good weather. Food, where would you recommend people to eat? You did mention the sushi at the eatery. What are some other your favorite Vancouver local spots?
Havana on Commercial. Now, is that still there?
I don't know. It might be.
It's a really good Cuban spot. White spot.
Yeah.
Love me some white spot. And my dad lives on the coast, so we're hopping on the ferry a lot. So, get the white spot on the boat.
Were you a pirate ship kid?
Of course, yeah, pirate pack. Yeah.
Do you have a special? What's your favorite burger at White Spot right now? If you were to order it right now.
Oh, I think it's like the doubles, triple O double or something like that.
Yeah. You're not a big Monty mushroom or a bacon cheddar guy.
Not a mushroom guy on burgers. No.
Really quick before we get into the wrestling stuff, this question actually came from a bunch of people as well. You returned and you grew your hair out and you had a whole look going on, very Vancouver hippie look going on. What made you cut your hair? That people want to know.
I was just over it, man.
Fair enough.
Yeah, just got annoying, and it's a little cooler now in Florida. It gets hot. I just gave myself a little trim. Sorry to disappoint.
I know a lot of people ask me that. I went into my Discord and even asked on Twitter. I'm like, hey, what do you guys want me to ask Kyle O Reilly? But if you have any questions, people are like,
what's really cool though? A lot of people don't know this, but hair actually grows back. So eventually, it'll be like that again. So hey,
100%. If you wanted to, sports. You played a ton of sports growing up. From what I learned, rugby, ice hockey, football, lacrosse, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, a bunch of things. Why wrestling? Why was that the one that stuck with you?
Because I also really loved performing and theater and drama and like being in the high school plays and stuff. And wrestling it's just that blend, right? It's live theater and sports. Maybe that's why it really resonated with me. And I just always loved it, man. It's hard to, why do you love it? Right. It's hard to really put into it's like, until you got to have your own experience with it. And, they didn't have amateur wrestling in my high school or anything like that. So I didn't have any experience doing amateur. I mean, I did backyard wrestling with my buddies and stuff like that. Of course, ran shows, all that stuff that you're not supposed to do.
Don't try that.
And then just, you got to do it properly. Though, got to go to a wrestling school. And that's where it all kind of began.
Did you have any pushback from your family or any of your friends when you actually started pursuing professional wrestling?
My family was always very supportive. I don't think they understood it, right? I don't think that they really got, maybe they thought maybe it's something I need to get out of my system, but they were always so supportive. No, I never would have made it without my family support. That's for sure. And especially being like a diabetic kid that had and was living illegally in the States for years and years and needing to get like medications shipped down. And like without my parents really, they really helped me out a lot.
I know you can talk about it now, but I always find that story so fascinating about how you went down there and you just did, handiwork for cash, and you wrestled at the same time just to make sure you could have it, make it happen when you're out there with Davey Richards and all that. And I just think it's that leap of faith that takes one person from one spot to another spot to actually have the belief that you can do that and risk it. It's a big risk. Like you were risking the chance of like not being able to go to the States for a minute. So I always think that's super cool for you. But when you decided that you wanted to pursue professional wrestling, and I do agree with you because I have this little cliche thing I've been saying on social media for years where I call it the greatest form of the greatest mixed form of sports and art and athleticism, right? Professional wrestling. Because that's what it is, right? I'm like, for the most part, you got to also, if you like wrestling, you probably really do like music, movies, and television shows.
Yeah.
And if you like those things, then wrestling goes with it because you get that. But then you also might like hockey or UFC and MMA because it gives you that athleticism side too. So when you decide, pardon?
Oh, wrestling just covers a lot of bases.
It does. It really does. It's a perfect combination of a little bit of everything. When you decide to pursue it, where did you find a school? Because if you're out in Vancouver and someone wants to pursue professional wrestling, what route would you tell them to take?
Well, now I know there's the Lionsgate Dojo, so I would highly recommend going there. Amazing facility and great trainers and guys that I trained with and wrestled with for years. When I was breaking in, the local company was ECCW, and they I'd been going to indie shows, for a few years with my friend Sid Silem, and we became just big fans of the local shows. And I'd never really experienced wrestling at that really raw and visceral environment, where it was just not polished like TV wrestling, right? And it was just something about that was like even just cooler. And getting to see live shows, a couple times a month was pretty awesome as well. And so they were opening a new school. They had the House of Pain, and I think it shut down for a few years. And they were opening up a new school called the In Pain Asylum out of a kickboxing gym in Wally. And we, me and my buddy Sid, our mom, because our moms were like, we want to meet this trainer that's running this school. So like we had to take our moms, and we met up with Michelle Starr in the subway, and so embarrassed. Like, can you just like, they're letting us train and signing off with us, but they had to talk to the guy. It was so embarrassing. Like, ambulance is present. Like, make sure. So yeah.
How old were you when you guys started?
I was 18. I just graduated high school.
No, fair enough. That's funny, sitting in a subway with Michelle Starr. I mean, then fast forward, like now you've been wrestling all over the world. You've been, in Japan. You wrestled obviously Ring of Honor, NXT, and now in AEW. You got the start with Adam Cole is the story, right? It was one of your first matches in the United States. You guys have been off and on friends for years, if people have been following. I remember seeing you guys wrestle at a Ring of Honor event in 2016 during WrestleMania weekend. I've seen you guys tear it up almost everywhere. You guys have not crossed paths since you've been back. Is that someone that, like we've seen you wrestle Roddy, so is that someone you are looking forward to getting back in the ring with soon?
My career and Adam's Cole career will always be somehow intertwined. I feel like we're destined to do it forever, like Joker in the Batman, right? To some degree. So yeah, of course that's eventually going to happen. Unfortunately, he's dealing with an ankle injury right now. But I'm sure once he gets back to 100%, which will hopefully be sooner than later, we'll mix it up again to some degree, whether that's as buddies or as enemies, and I'm sure it'll all happen in every possible scenario, between now and when we eventually retire.
Talking about being 100%, you just went through neck fusion surgery. You had for about like 20 months, I believe. What's the biggest thing you learned in that time off? Like, what has changed from Kyle O'Reilly prior to the neck surgery and having all this time off to Kyle O'Reilly now?
It's a really good question. I guess this was the first time in my career where I was really had a significant amount of time off.
Yeah, that's what I figured, because I'm like, that was a long stop, and I feel like you've been go with injuries here and there, but like still pretty go. Like, this was time. The most you haven't wrestled probably in a long time.
Yeah, I'd been hurt many times, but I'd never been like proper injured, like where I needed surgery or anything like that. It just it was kind of a healthy break for me to just fully just shut off from wrestling. I didn't watch it for a few months. I just let myself just kind of, I don't know, man. It was a really kind of weird time. And my daughter was 6 months old when I got hurt. So I really look at the injury and the complications from the surgery as almost a blessing now, because I got to be at home with her for those early, for 18 months at an early age where we got to bond so much. And I would have been on the road otherwise, right? I was a stay-at-home dad for 18 months or so. And it was really kind of special to me to get that and to just have a little clarity and to look at wrestling a little different, like you said. And yeah, so now I just feel like I got a total new, like, kind of just outlook about it all. And I'm so excited to be back now. Like, now that, I am healthy and I am back in the ring, I just feel so rejuvenated and so excited about being in this company and everything that comes along with it, man. So it's pretty cool.
I think it's insane too, because like you just said that, like, you kind of got a different perspective of wrestling now. And I think, for the first part of someone's career, you're so hungry, you really want to make it, you want to have the best matches, and you want to try to steal the show every time you're on the show. But now that you've had this time off, do you look at, like, what is that perspective now of wrestling for you? Is it about stealing the show and having the best matches, or is it just like, is it more personal now for you?
I've kind of always had the outlook of, like, no matter where the show is or how many people are there, to always, wrestle with my heart and soul and be passionate about it, right? Look at it the same, like, it doesn't mean that I'm going to have the same match every time, but I always kind of wrestle for the benefit of the show and for who else is on the show and for what the promoter wants. If I'm the opening match on a show, yeah, I'm going to have the best match I possibly can, but within those opening match parameters, it's going to be a 6 to 8 minute match where it's the first match in the show. People, like you said, might have never seen wrestling before. So you want to give it, kind of simplify it for them, right? So if I'm an opening match, I probably won't leave the ring. I'll probably keep it very simple and basic, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to bust my ass and give it everything I have, So I've always kind of had an outlook of always try to steal the show. Yeah, of course, but in the parameters that I'm given and to where my placement on the card is and to what the promoter wants from me,
I'm also sure by the time you came back, you walked into that locker room and those a bunch of new faces and a lot of familiar faces. I've always said the coolest thing about AEW for me, and I've had other people on the shows, like, I'm like, for a lot of you that were in other places for a long period of time, coming back in this locker room, you're probably seeing old friends you haven't seen since you were on the independents. Brian Danielson put it in a really good way where he's like, it's like what this was meant to happen, but like you needed that time away, but no one's really disconnected. And is there anybody that you haven't worked with yet that you're looking forward to work with, whether it's someone from your past or someone that you haven't worked with yet? Like, I know for a fact, I've always enjoyed your matches against Shibata. Now that he's like fully there, I'd love to see you two wrestling. I think you guys both have that shoot style, you guys can strike, and both of you guys had to change your wrestling styles a little bit too. So it's going to be different. You're both grown. You've gotten, more perfected your craft a bit more. So it'd be interesting to see you and Shibata now compared to what it was like 6-7 years ago. But who are some people you'd love to wrestle?
Well, thanks for answering my question for me. Next question.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. I don't know even to say Shibata, but I just.
Why is there a better answer? I mean, I
actually was, so before I did this, obviously I was doing my research, and then I was on YouTube and I was watching some interviews, but then the match came up again. I watched one of them again. I'm like, oh yeah, like, this is great.
Nice.
You guys' styles mesh so well.
Yeah. I think there's a real mutual respect between us there too. Yeah, he's one of the best, and I've had some of my favorite matches with him. In terms of people that I've never wrestled before, I'd like to wrestle Hook a lot. I think he's really good.
I think and Hook would be a fun one too, because I feel like you're more, a standing striker and like wrestling, and Hook's gonna try to talk you around, so it's gonna be
he uses legitimate technique, and I appreciate that. And those are people that I'll work well with.
What are the chances, hypothetically, that we'd see a ReDragon reunite with you and Bobby Fish? Because one of my favorite tag teams, right? So
yeah, Bobby's been a tag partner for over 10 years, right? Yeah. So we'll always be kind of known as tag partners with each other, and we've wrestled all over the world together. And he's been one of my closest friends, So who knows what the future holds, man? I know he's off, kind of doing his own thing right now, but that's the thing about wrestling; you never know, right? So.
Literally, and I think if anything, in the last like 4 or 5 years has shown us that you actually never know. There's been a lot of crazy things that have happened.
Yeah.
Who thought Shibata was gonna wrestle again after his situation, and now he's back out having matches regularly. Bryan Danielson was retired at one point, and just AEW as a whole, like nobody saw that coming when it happened. So you never do know. Another thing that was huge for AEW that unfortunately you didn't get to be a part of, but will be happening again, is All In Wembley. And considering it being at a big stage like that, is there a match, like this little fantasy booking, but is there a match you would want to have in London at Wembley this year?
Man, that's a real tough question. I mean, considering it's Wembley and it could potentially be home turf for him, I mean, how could I not say Will Ospreay? I mean, the guy is just a phenomenal talent. I mean, you watch him and it's like, wow, you're like watching like history happen before your eyes, right, when you see him wrestle. So recently on Dynamite, we wrestled for the first time ever. We had never touched, and I thought we had good chemistry. So yeah, if I'm booking fantasy booking, yeah, I'd love to wrestle Will. I mean, I'd love to wrestle Will on Dynamite any week,
yeah,
any year. But at Wembley, I mean, could you imagine a better environment to wrestle a guy like that?
No,
I don't think so.
Absolutely not. I think that would be a banger as well. I don't think hopefully Tony hears that and we can get him a little hyped about it, because I could definitely see that being a thing. I want to ask you, this is a little bit, just a couple more fun questions, and we'll do a little name association at the end. But if wrestling was the music industry, who would Kyle O'Reilly be?
Ooh, it's a really good question. Someone that's kind of underground, that's kind of niche within a niche, like an indie band that has had a couple of hits, but not everybody has heard of them. And
real big cult following.
Yeah, it would definitely be a cult following. That's a really good question. I don't know who I would say. How would you answer for me?
For you? Oh, that's quite my way. This is the second time this has happened to me, where someone threw it back at me, and I'm like, oh, I did not expect that. I don't know, but I do think it would be like
they were kind of a big kind of part of the grunge movement in the 90s, but they did their own thing, very unique sound, and got some great songs. But like, you could ask a person off the street, they might not know who they are.
I would also say maybe someone that was like it would be a band, but also someone that did great themselves as a solo, a little bit of both,
Oh, yeah.
You were great in a band, and you also were great as a solo.
All right, Paul McCartney, you said it for me.
And then another question, this is a little bit more cliche, more wrestling interview cliche, but who would be your Canadian Mount Rushmore for wrestling?
Canadian Mount Rushmore.
Just Canadian wrestlers.
Man, it's like you don't want to leave anyone out.
You don't. I understand where you're coming from. I guess it's only 4 people, right?
I guess I'll say Brett, Owen, Adam Copeland, Chris Jericho.
I mean, that's fair.
But like, I would put Christian Cage on there as well. If you could have 5.
Like put like Adam and Christian like together somehow, like smush.
Yeah.
Like they're 2 for 1 deal on the mountain there.
What's yours?
For me, I think we definitely Brett, definitely Jericho. I want to say Adam Copeland, but I'm just thinking if you left anyone off, if I should like make sure I put them on there.
You know who's from Surrey? Earthquake, John Tenta.
Yeah, he is. He is also that would. I mean, his legacy.
Yeah.
I found this old face. This is so like inside, but like I found this old Facebook. I was trying to find my mom's like she grew up in Cloverdale and went to like Lawrence Tweedmer and stuff. So I was trying to find some stuff about Cloverdale. My grandparents had a blueberry farm there when I was a kid, and on number 10 highway. And I found this like Cloverdale Facebook page. And it was like all these old people that like grew up there. And I was going through the pictures, and they had all these people that knew him. And they had all these like rare pictures of them just hanging out with John Tenta when he was like a kid at like that rodeo restaurant that used to be in the corner there and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool, because it's like they probably don't even like they think it's cool that he wrestled, but like they knew him, so they just like knew the man. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, And they're like, oh, John, he was a great guy, and like the comments of people just reminiscing, and I thought that was super cool. But that's a little side note. But I would say, yeah, Brett, Jericho. I just feel like I'm missing so many Canadians right now off the top of my head.
I know.
which is crazy. And I guess I'd say Adam Copeland.
And one of the obvious answers, their legacy is so tarnished you could never put them on there. You know?
Oh no, 100%. And that's actually crossed my head like 3 times. I'm like, obviously I can't. That wouldn't be on a mountain. Man, I know there's so many too. And I'm like, I mean, there's a lot of current ones right now, such as yourself and the KOs of the world and the Sami Zayns of the world. I'm trying to think of.
Sure. But I think to be on the Mount Rushmore, I mean, you got to be like retired.
Yeah. Well, I have a hard time when someone asks me like, who are your favorite wrestlers of all time? I'm like, it's hard for me to put anyone from this modern era because
it's part of our generation. Yeah.
It's like a nostalgia thing that has to put them on there. You know, like I had to watch them when I was like a kid or at least a teenager.
You know who would probably go up? Who needs to go up there? Actually, would be Stu Hart, because you need the George Washington, right? And he's the founding father of it all.
I mean, happy birthday, Stu Hart! As we're recording, it's his birthday today, so that should be. I mean, I just saw it on Instagram, so that's a huge one, actually, Stu Hart.
Yeah.
I think you just really got to think about Stampede, and there should be a couple of people that pop up to you. But I mean, here's one that we're not taking consideration because we were so hardcore kayfabed, but he's behind you is the Hot Rod.
That's right.
He's right. Canadian. We fell so hard for the gimmick that we forget he's Canadian. That like
you forget.
He's someone that should definitely, like the first WrestleMania, what he was as a heel. Piper, I think he's someone that should definitely be on the Mount Rushmore.
I love me some Piper, and it's funny you say that because you forget that he's.
You forget, like, you know what I mean? If you didn't have that behind you, I might have not remembered. But I was like, oh wait a minute, Stampede. I'm like, oh, Roddy Piper's from Saskatchewan, out of all places. But yeah, I think Piper, Brat, Stu Hart, and I'd say either Jericho or Adam Copeland right now, one of the two. But yeah, that would be mine. Let's talk about some of the people from Vancouver. Some of the people you either came up with, you might have wrestled while you were down here, people from your era, and the people that are doing great stuff today, like people that you came up with that are now training people and stuff. Let's start with Artemis Spencer. What would you say about good old Artie?
Man, Artie. So when I first started going to shows, he was wrestling under a mask. And he was known as Halo.
Yeah.
And like me and my buddy Sid, we became friends with him. And like, man, like he was basically our age, maybe like a year older, but he's already wrestling on shows. He was so advanced. He started young, and like he was just so talented. And yeah, a lot of my earlier matches working with him, just learning so much from him because he's just so skilled and just so highly, highly technical. And I'm so glad now that he's getting the recognition that he deserves. You know, he's out there more and people are noticing him, and he is just an incredible talent, trainer and friend.
Nicole Matthews.
Oh, just amazing talent. My first intergender match was with her at like a student show, maybe the first year I'd broken in, and she's just incredible talent as well. Same deal. I'm glad she's getting the recognition she deserves as well, because she's just an amazing trainer and wrestler.
Good old Tony Baroni.
Tony Baroni. He went to like elementary school with my sister, or I forget how my sister knows him, but I remember like, you know, Tony Baroni? Hilarious. What a dude. Awesome wrestler, funny guy. I got my heads. He was a paramedic at one point, and I got the back of my head split open at like a wrestling show. And I was like, my wife, she might have just been my girlfriend at the time, but I was in Canada, and I was like, yeah, I split my head open. She's like, go get stitches, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, Tony Baroni just super glued it shut. It's fine. She's like, who is Tony Baroni, and why is he super gluing your head?
That's hilarious. I forgot that he was a paramedic. I know, shout out to all those people, plus a couple more of them are named, because these are a lot of people that also gave me a lot of first opportunities to do interviews and stuff when I first started all this stuff. I remember sitting in the ring at the Lionsgate Dojo and doing one with 3 of them. So I have a bunch of memories with them all, but I totally forgot about that part. El Phantasmo, man. Part of my original training class. Just a stand-up guy and an incredible talent. You know, he's over in New Japan just crushing it. That guy, I mean, he's destined for more great things as well, because he's just flawless in the ring, man. I've had some of my favorite matches with him. And yeah, he used to wrestle under a mask as well. Some of our first matches were against each other. And yeah, just wicked guy. So talented. Scotty Mack. He was one of my trainers. So Michelle Starr, Aaron Idle, and Scotty Mack were like my kind of 3 main trainers. And I learned a ton from him. Had a lot of my first like big matches or like main event matches
working with him, and like as a fan going to indie shows, he was like the top guy. And just kind of, he inspired me that I, maybe I could actually pursue this and do something with wrestling.
The similar story, like when I first started going back to like ECCW shows and stuff, Scotty was the top guy, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay. Billy Sway,
man, I love Ill Bill, dude. we were a tag team at one point. We've had we've had like an Iron Man match. We've had one of my favorite opponents of all time. Just a stand-up guy, man. Ill Bill Sway. I mean, if people listening to this don't know a lot of these people that we're talking about, like check them out on YouTube, because these are some of the best talents, I know,
and that's why I wanted to bring them up with you, because I'm like, I know you've worked with a lot of them, you wrestle a lot of them, and they probably don't always get talked about on these shows that you're on. So I want to make sure, because my audience is a little bit bigger and more of a reach than just Vancouver. So hopefully, if I'm talking to them about with you, then more people will check them out. So definitely check them on YouTube. And you talked a little bit about them already, and now I've learned more about your guys' relationship just through this interview. But Sid Asylum,
yeah, we first met like playing Pee Wee football when we were like, however old I was, 8, maybe 10, and he was like, we just instantly connected because we both liked wrestling. You know how like you have that wrestling friend, when you're growing up, because like wrestling was huge for a while, and then like when I got to high school, wrestling suddenly wasn't the coolest thing in the world anymore. And so like, being looked at as the wrestling kid, but you had a wrestling friend, so like you could still, And I never would have became a wrestler if it wasn't for Sid Asylum. He's the guy that took me to indie shows. He's the guy that told me there was a school opening up. I mean, we talk every day still. Like, he's one of my closest friends.
Do you ever wrestle Bishop?
I have wrestled Bishop. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you about him. How about Bishop?
Oh, Bishop's awesome too, man. Him and Sid were like a really formidable tag team for a lot of years, I know. And I think after I had left BC, Bishop really started to blow up on the local scene as well.
And then last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the good old Bollywood boys, Harv and Garcia.
Those guys are right, man. And first training class, Gerv was a part of it. Harv came in, maybe a year after we had started training. We've done camps. We went to the Harley race camp together. And just glad to see those guys just still killing it. Still having a great time, and still just a super entertaining act to watch, and talented guys. So I'm super happy for those guys.
The scene's booming here once again. There's a bunch of independent companies out. We got Boom Wrestling, we got WrestleCore, we got NEW, we got Apex is a new one, but I'd love to see you back out here wrestling again. It'd be super dope. And they're all a little bit different. Like WrestleCore is like little underground indie, like underground music concept thing. Boom's like characters and storylines, and it's really entertaining. NEW's like wrestling, like you're trying to put the best matches, and then Apex is brand new, and then obviously ASW is like the OG company that's been here forever, but they're still around. So yeah, I'd love to see you back out here doing that thing. It'd be dope.
Oh, me too, man. And there's nothing like wrestling, indie shows in your hometown. It's really nice. It's cool.
I remember. I think I did see you. I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but it was for NEW, and it might have been in between your jump to AEW. I might be wrong though, but you came, or was it when you were going to be?
It might have been ECW. At the Commodore, it was an ECW show.
Oh, I think that was the one.
Yeah, I wrestled El Fantasma.
I feel like, did you give a speech after? Because I have it recorded on my phone.
I think that's right before I went to NXT.
I think it was, but that wasn't at Commodore. That was at the New West one, I think. The location. I might be wrong.
Oh, maybe I had another match in New West. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I
still have the video on my phone. I should probably post it. Like you giving a speech. I might not be back.
I wrestled Tony Baroni on that show.
I think you did. Yeah. Last but not least, we'll wrap this up. I won't take too much of your time. Obviously, guys, May 11th, Vancouver, Rogers Arena. I still call it GM Place sometimes, but Rogers Arena. Yeah, I'm like, it's hard for me to say Rogers. I feel like that's in Toronto or something, but Rogers Arena. Yeah. May 11th, guys, AEW Collision. If you haven't got your tickets yet, please go get them. It's the first time AEW is coming here, and guys, if you want them to come back, you got to show up. So make sure you guys show up. But my last question, I asked this to everybody. I'm going to ask it to you. Do you feel like if you would have talked to, 15, 16-year-old Kyle O Reilly, do you feel like you've made your younger self proud?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know if I can really expand on that, but yeah, I think young teenage Kyle would be pretty stoked right now to know his future ended up okay.
That's awesome. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully I get to see you when you're here. Oh, you guys were here once for an NXT show, and I vividly remember walking by you and you were waiting for a friend to pick you up, and I was just kind of like, I'm not going to bother you, but hey, what's up?
Oh,
you're like,
really?
Yeah.
I was waiting for my buddy Kenny Lush to come grab me on his.
Yeah. Like everyone was jumping on the bus, but you were just like chilling there. I'm like, oh, he didn't like, okay. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's going back to the like. I had friends. There,
You're home. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. No, but that's another time. But anyways, yeah. No, it was a pleasure having you on here. Super cool to finally get to talk to you.
And thanks for supporting. Well, just thanks for the support of me personally, but just thanks for being a good rep of pro wrestling at all levels, man. It's really cool to see. You show us in such a positive light, and it's awesome, man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate hearing that. It's I've been doing this for a minute now. They finally let me do commentary at a couple of shows here in Vancouver, which is cool.
Dude. Good for you. Keep it up, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to see you wrestle in Vancouver at Rogers Arena. I just feel like the little kid in you would probably be super stoked to be like,
oh yeah. And I know the crowd. I mean, Vancouver sports fans are always awesome. Wrestling fans in Vancouver are always great.
And we're hungry. We don't get a lot of wrestling here every year.
Yeah,
we're not one of those cities that, either company or any company ever comes to often. So I've been to all the indie shows here, and they're always sold out and packed, and everyone's having a great time. And I do think there's a lot of people that probably went to the indie shows here that might be coming to a wrestling show for the first time when you guys come. So I think that's what makes it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, everybody come out and support, man. And who knows, in maybe a year or two, maybe they bring a pay-per-view.
I know. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So talk to you soon.
It's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.